You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. LSU is back on the practice field Tuesday. Defensive coordinator Matt House met with reporters afterwards. Over the weekend, we got to hear from Mike Denbrock. Tuesday, it was Matt House's turn. He kind of gave an evaluation of how spring's going so far.
Pretty happy with how spring's going as far as, just reestablishing our process, reestablishing the traits that we view as important. A lot of young guys out there getting reps, which is good for our depth going into the fall. I had some good situational work today.
Remember the LSU defense a year ago? Obviously just very thin across that defensive front, but they got really good production out of the guys they did have. But you lose Ali Gay, you lose B.J. Ojulari, you lose Micah Baskerville. You lose so much in that defensive front seven. You lose guys in the back end. You lose all of your starting corners. You lose at safety Jay Ward. You lose Joe Fouché. So it's interesting because your numbers defensively are turning over tremendously. But you feel like you got a lot of young guys' experience, and you're probably even more talented just as far as physical ability. Like last year, you had to use a lot of guys as stopgaps to plug holes, as one-year fixes. But this year, you look at this defense and you realize they were able to get younger through the portal and the incoming freshman class, and the guys who were returning who were able to get a lot of experience. The most notable change, however, of course, is on the staff with now Jamar Cain leaving, but also with John Jancic coming into an on-field role in coaching the jack position, which is where I'm going to start. Because, first of all, just Matt House talking about the value that John Jancic brings being on-field.
Listen, I'm a big John Jancic fan. I love having JJ out there. He gives great energy. He's a great teacher. He's been successful in this league, both as a coordinator and as a position coach. He's definitely been an added value on the field.
As a reminder, John Jancic, he's 55 years old, can still go get it. He has been, a defensive coordinator at Georgia. He's been a defensive coordinator at Cincinnati. He was the defensive coordinator at Tennessee. Was back at was back at Georgia, but on their 2021 national championship team as a quality control assistant for a couple of seasons before coming to LSU a year ago. He was in an off-field role. I think it's very safe to say that when he was brought to Baton Rouge, there was an understanding he was going to be moved into an on-field role, and so they moved him into this jack role. But listen, this is a guy that could coach anywhere on the defensive side of the ball and has coached everywhere on the defensive side of the ball, from defensive line and linebackers. He's coached safeties when he was at South Florida. So you've got a guy that has coached all over and has coordinated defenses. I've coordinated defense at Colorado State as well. Forgot to mention that. So tremendous amount of experience. Essentially having him anywhere on the field is going to make you better. But this was Matt House. So how they divvied up the roles was going to be interesting. But this was Matt House explaining why it was important having someone coach the jack linebackers separate from the inside backers.
They have to do so many things, right? Where, for the most part, our defensive line, the interior, they're playing as part of the front all the time. That jack is a little bit different. We move him all over the place. He can be part of coverage. He can be part of the front. He can be an inside rusher. He can be an outside rusher. So although it's not the most difficult position to learn from an assignment standpoint, it's very important that you drill the technical aspect of that position.
It's true. We saw that with Harold Perkins a year ago, obviously, as the way that teams started to combat Perkins' ability to rush the passer was they would start to flex out a tight end or a back, and Perkins would have to travel, so you were taking Perkins away from the box, and it sort of changes your role a little bit. Speaking of which, Brian Kelly, by the way, was very clear about this the last time he met with the media, that as much as it may be hard to comprehend why you would move Perkins from the jack spot where he was so successful, Perkins is going to be an inside linebacker.
Yeah, we want him playing linebacker. We got him on the field last year in an accelerated role based upon the fact that there was just too much for him to digest, and we didn't want to get in the way of too much meant paralysis by analysis, right? So I thought Matt did a great job of making things a lot smoother for him so we could get him on the field and let him play fast. Now it's time to take the whole, position and, teach it. So, he's a linebacker. He's going to play linebacker, and he's fully invested in that position. So you'll see him playing linebacker for us.
So you're going to see him playing linebacker. He's invested in that position. Harold Perkins is more valuable to you becoming the next Devin White than he is staying in the role where he's just an edge rusher. Not to say that that's not significant, but he can still rush the passer from his inside linebacker spot. So kind of the big question is, when it comes to Perkins, it's learning that spot. Can we play number 12, please? So this was Matt House. And look, it's only been a few months since Perkins' freshman year ended, but this was Matt House talking about Perkins' development year to year.
I think the number one thing is he's got a better understanding of our process and how we prepare. And that's the biggest thing. His habits are much more consistent, and as I said last year, that hasn't changed. He just loves football, really coachable.
I know I keep making sort of the Devin White comp, but it's hard not to when you see that guy that's that physically gifted. He wore 40 a year ago. Now he's wearing 4. But when you look back at what Devin White was as a freshman, he played in just 8 games as a freshman. Devin White did. Had 30 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. So you could tell already. Now, look, in 2016, it's fair to note, in 2016, you had Kendall Beckwith and Duke Riley as your starting linebackers. So for freshman Devin White, coming over from high school where he played running back and linebacker, it was going to be a little bit more of a learning curve. But then look what happened year 2. He became starting inside backer and went from 30 tackles to 133 tackles as a sophomore, had 4.5 sacks and an interception. Then a year later, of course, he won the Butkus Award, had 123 tackles, 12 for loss, and 3 sacks on the season. So the pass rush part of his game was never what it was for Perkins a year ago because they're playing different positions. But it's easy to see how moving positions can take Harold Perkins from a spot where he was a year ago, where he's focused singularly on one thing, which is rush the passer, to now it's, hey, go make 130 tackles, which he's very, very capable of doing given his ability. The other guy that's really interesting at that linebacker position, I'm kind of focused on linebacker a bit because that's obviously the position that Matt House coaches there at the inside backer spot. And it's where Perkins is. But the contrast to Perkins, I think is Omar Speights. Now, Perkins is entering his sophomore year. I'm not going to say he's undersized, but relative to a guy like Omar Speights, he is. Speights is listed at 6'1", 237. So he's pushing 240. You're talking about the guy that looks like your big physical prototypical NFL interior linebacker. Here, and look, he's coming in from Oregon State where he was a team captain. He's played a ton of football during his time there in Corvallis. So he'll be a 5th-year senior. And he has been at that inside backer spot his entire career. 71 tackles as a freshman, 7.5 for loss, 3.5 sacks. Compare that to what we just talked about with a guy like Devin White, who had 30 tackles as a freshman, only played in 8 games. Speights stepped on campus in 2019 and boom, was right on the field and had 71 tackles on the season. So now you're talking about a guy that is a veteran dude, a big physical thumper on the interior, and probably is going to help elevate a guy like Harold Perkins just because Perkins is now standing next to a guy who's been playing this position for 5 years. Here was Matt House on Speights.
I love Omar's approach, the way he goes about and handles his business, the focus he comes in with, the attention to detail he has in his work. He's not the most vocal guy. He's more vocal on the field. But what he does do is he does a great job modeling to that whole room and to Harold.
Modeling to the whole room, and he specifically mentioned, and to Harold. Look, in losing what you did a year ago, in losing Micah Baskerville, in losing Mike Jones, who never really established himself as an inside backer, but was a great team guy, and losing some of the veterans at that position. We know Colby Fields transferred in after a year from South Carolina. He's already gone now. But in losing some of the veterans there, you replaced what you lost in leadership and experience and all of that sort of stuff in that room. Look, West Weeks is a fine player and is going to be part of that rotation. Greg Penn took a step year to year. You hope he takes an even bigger step. But there isn't any substitute for a guy that's been playing at the major college football level for 4 years now as a fifth-year senior that can help those guys grow up at that position. So I think that's super valuable from that standpoint, that not only do you have a productive inside backer to step in and take the spot of a guy like Micah Baskerville, but also, as Matt House said, can model that position for Harold Perkins. One of the big things that maybe we're not talking a bunch about, because I get why we're spending so much time talking about the cornerbacks. It's a flashy position. You lost all your starters there and really all of your production. I get why we're talking about the edge guys with Swinson coming in and Ovi Agofu from Texas. But, man, as far as impactful dudes, I mean, just think about what Micah Baskerville meant to the LSU defense a year ago as your leading tackler. I mean, you lose that guy and you replace him with another dude that's a fifth-year guy. It's meaningful for so many reasons. If not flashy, it certainly is going to be impactful. One more from Matt House. Can we play number 16, please? We've talked also a lot about corner. I just mentioned it there. And he was asked if this cornerback position battle could linger all the way into fall camp.
You guys heard this a little bit last year, and it's the same thing. Both as a staff and as players playing together, you got to learn how we communicate amongst ourselves, how they play. There's a little bit of, you got to play snaps together, whether you're a corner, a safety. And then as coaches, it's a great opportunity for us to learn on the field what their true strengths and weaknesses are so we can put them in better positions to succeed. And
that's even tougher now because you don't have Deuce Chestnut or J.K. Johnson. Chestnut coming in from Syracuse and J.K. Johnson coming in from Ohio State. Chestnut, as it's kind of been described to me, is a really big cornerback, like full, strong, thick-looking cornerback that kind of looks more like an NFL safety. And then Johnson is just a more experienced guy as well, and and maybe a little more has a little more of the mental part of the game down as well. But those are two guys who very well could end up being your day one starters that aren't even there yet. So the opportunity to get reps together and play together as a full secondary, that's going to bleed into fall camp. So good to hear from Matt House on Tuesday, sort of as an update on fall camp, as the Tigers have their spring game coming up later this month. Year number 2 under Brian Kelly. A lot of expectations. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.